Competitive Pokemon players have used the TM for overheat as a held item in the competitive setting, and I'm not joking, they've actually done this. There's actually a lot of really strange items that manage to be useful at one point or another in the grand history of competitive Pokemon. A few years ago, I even made a video about items that I thought were just completely useless in competitive. In that video, I talk about strange items that never see use, like the Sticky Barb, the Binding Band, and the Float Stone. These items are generally ones that you never actually see in a competitive setting, and for what it's worth, most of them just aren't used, but some of them do have their purposes. For what purpose, though, would I need my Pokemon to weigh less with a Float Stone? I'm not that afraid of low kick, dude. That video was fun and all, but despite how useless some of those items may seem, there are some niche situations where weird items have seen use. So that's what I want to talk about today. We're just going to discuss weird and useful items in competitive Pokemon. Let's just get right into it. If you guys enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, become a YouTube channel member, hype the video, all of that. And hey, you definitely want to subscribe because at 300,000 subscribers, I'll be ranking every bench in Lumio City. Let's just begin. My editor has informed me that despite how nice this floral shirt I bought is, because we're going to be using a green screen in this video, I have to change. So, I guess I'll be rocking this for the rest of the video. I was Team Jacob until the last movie. We're going to start off small and talk about the Iron Ball and Power items, two items which work in very similar ways but have a very specific difference between them that ends up changing the way that certain Pokemon want to play. The Power items are actually training tools before anything else. It's kind of an underwhelming use case when the name of the items are Power items. You know, if I equip my Pokemon with something called a Power Belt or a Power Weight, I expect them to shoot lasers out of their eyes. I mean, some Pokemon already do, but I figured it would like improve them. But no, they're just like Goku's weighted clothing, which is cool in its own way, but you know. When you want to train a Pokemon, you equip them with the power item that corresponds with the stat that you're trying to train, and you get extra EVs in that stat for every Pokemon that you KO while the items are equipped. However, while the Pokemon is holding the item, their speed stat is going to be cut in half, and that's the key. This effect is why power items have seen any amount of use in Pokemon tournaments. One of the more notable users of power items is Galarian Zapdos, who used power items in the past to underspeed lots of Pokemon under Trick Room and play a unique support role on certain teams. Notably, it's able to underspeed partner Calyrex Ice and Ursaluna in Trick Room to support them with coaching and utilizing its ability Defiant to deal with opposing Incineroar. The Iron Ball is actually an item which functions nearly identically to power items in competitive battles, but comes with one added effect, and that's that it's going to ground the user. This means that flying types are now touching the ground and levitators are doing the same. Which item you use depends entirely on the Pokemon that you use it on, and on which team. Zapdos can coaching boost Ursaluna while being immune to its Earthquake if it runs a power item, but if it's holding an Iron Ball, it can benefit from being immune to priority moves like Psychic Terrain and provide support to that kind of team. That being said, the Iron Ball was also used on Grimmsnarl in Generation 8 VGC. Dynamax Pokemon were so powerful that a single well-timed Dynamax could steal a game from the jaws of defeat. Grimmsnarl did a little bit of trolling. Iron Ball Grimmsnarl was a common set which would use Trick to swap the item onto the target Dynamax Pokemon, cutting their speed in half permanently and allowing for a partner Pokemon to follow up and take a KO on a Pokemon that may have otherwise had a good matchup into them. Like most of Generation 8, it was all very silly, but we have to talk about it anyways, because Dynamax is coming back in Champions, so. Speaking of very useful items, it's time for our sponsor. We have those now. This message is sponsored by Raycon. Here at Moxie Corp, we believe in two things: making high-quality rank slop content weekly, and making sure our mothers feel loved and cared for. With Mother's Day quickly approaching, it's actually a great time to find a gift that you know your mom's actually going to use. I've definitely given my mom a ton of gifts over the years that she never had any use for, and with each passing year, I run out of more and more ideas. But this year, I know that whether she needs to run some errands, go for a walk, or just talk on the phone with her kids, she'll be using Raycon's Essential Open Earbuds. The Raycon Essential Open Earbuds are an excellent Mother's Day gift to show the person that raised you that you care for them. The sound is clear and balanced without feeling closed off from your surroundings, and with my mom always having her attention pulled one way or another around the house, she'll be able to hear anything that happens while also being able to listen to her music and podcasts. And did I mention that they even have a 36-hour battery life? That's 8 hours of playtime and 36 hours of battery with the charging case, so she won't have to charge them all the time. This is important because my mom personally does forget to charge her phone all the time, so the earbuds will at least be charged. They're super lightweight and comfortable. I wear them while I feed my cats, go for walks, and ignore the dishes for the third day in a row. I mean, I'm even wearing them right now, as you can see. Raycon has over 3 million customers, and the sound quality is just as good as way more expensive brands, so you're going to be getting great sound quality at half the price. And if you don't like them, they have a 30-day guarantee. I use my Raycons every day, so I know that my mom is going to get a lot of use out of them no matter what tasks come her way. Celebrate the moms in your life by clicking the link in the description box or going to buyraycon.com/MoxieBoostedOpen to get 15% off the Raycon Essential Open Earbuds. And thanks again to Raycon for sponsoring this video. Berry juice is a really weird item. Like, why was the only way to get this most of the time was to give Shuckle a berry and kindly ask him for the juice? Why does he have juice boxes on him? Is he that thirsty? I don't know. But this item is virtually useless, as all it does is heal a Pokemon when that Pokemon drops to 50% of their health or lower, and it only heals them by 20 HP. This isn't super useful since at level 50 or level 100 where most battles are had, Pokemon have a lot more than 20 HP, to the point where the berry juice is practically a one-time leftovers activation. That being said, there is an environment where the Pokemon are thirsty enough to make use of it. Welcome to Little Cup, the only format where Pokemon battles are held at level 5. Due to the super low level, the HP stats are similarly low, allowing for berry juice to actually be a pretty prominent item in the format. But one of the most notorious berry juice users in this metagame is Magnemite, who functions as a stall Pokemon of all things. With no investment, level 5 Magnemite will end up with 19 HP. Magnemite's function is to be sent out on an already poisoned target and sit in front of them until they faint. It achieves this by making use of its ability Sturdy, the berry juice, and the move Recycle. It's impossible for most Pokemon to one-hit KO Magnemite because its ability Sturdy outright prevents this. Because of this, Magnemite will be able to consistently end up below 50% HP and recover health with its berry juice, sending it back to full, then spam Recycle to bring it back over and over and over again. In some situations, being virtually impossible to KO and making it effectively a great toxic stall Pokemon in the format. You know, unless it runs into the ever-elusive double kick of Bunnelby. Then it actually has to play the game. The Eject Pack is an item which doesn't see wide usage, but has nonetheless become a staple of certain team archetypes. And while it's broadly useful on any Pokemon that has access to moves like Draco Meteor or Leaf Storm that lower the user's attack stats, it's funny that its most iconic user is Torkoal of all Pokemon. Torkoal makes use of the Eject Pack item by allowing it to set up Sun while getting easy pivots into partner Pokemon. If an opponent were to send out an Incineroar on turn 0 and intimidate the Torkoal, it would automatically swap out and allow for a Pokemon like Charizard to hit the field and threaten massive damage. Now, let's say the opponent doesn't lead off with an Intimidate user. Well, in that case, Torkoal will just obliterate whatever's in front of it with Sun boosted Overheat and switch out anyways. It's like U-turn but big. It's the illusion of free choice. The Adrenaline Orb is actually an item which used to see slightly higher usage on its initial release back in Generation 7, and that mostly had to do with the fact that Landorus Therian was a bit more prominent in the competitive scene back then. Is Lando T a bad Pokemon now? No, but a lot of the ground type stock these days is taken up by Landorus Incarnate, Ursaluna, and the other Ursaluna, so it's not as common. The reason the Adrenaline Orb was so great into Landorus Therian was that all this item does is boost the user's speed by 1 stage if they're intimidated. By throwing this item on a Pokemon that can deal with Landorus, such as Milotic, they can now outspeed and KO Landorus before it can even attack. Milotic is an especially solid Adrenaline Orb user due to its ability Competitive. Competitive grants Milotic a +2 boost to its special attack stat if any of its stats get lowered, meaning a single Intimidate can give Milotic a +2 special attack boost and a +1 speed boost, at which point it just becomes a really annoying Pokemon to deal with. If you don't believe me, check out Generation 8 Milotic. Coil, Hypnosis, Muddy Water, it was awful. Okay chat, how do you deal with an electric type? Like, let's say an electric type is able to just one-shot most of your team. Regieleki, but it can only click electric moves. Regieleki. Well, you send in a ground type Pokemon, right? Wrong. Ring Target. Good game. The Ring Target is an item which doesn't have any standard users because there's practically no reason to run it on any of your own Pokemon, as all this does is remove your type immunities. Kind of useless, its only downsides. That being said, it's an item that you can trick or switcheroo onto an opposing Pokemon that would otherwise stop your sweep. It's most notorious for being ran on gimmick Regieleki teams, but a modern use case for this would be to remove Incineroar's Psychic immunity for Psy-Spam teams that just want to click Expanding Force and not think. You just trick it onto the Incineroar and play like it never even hit the field. It's not really a super common item, but it's worth a mention on this video in particular. Whoa, Big Nugget be upon ye. Alright, this is what you guys came to this video for. So we all know about Fling Iron Ball, right? Fling is a physical dark type move which causes the user to throw its held item at the opposing Pokemon and deal damage based on which item they threw. So yeah. There's also some miscellaneous secondary effects for certain items like the Light Ball paralyzing Pokemon or the Razor Fang flinching Pokemon. But the most common item people think to throw is an Iron Ball, due to it being so heavy that it makes Fling a 130 base power physical attack. But what if you want to use a 130 base power Fling without cutting your own Pokemon's speed in half like we mentioned at the top of the video? Well, that's where the Big Nugget comes in. The Big Nugget actually has an equivalent damage modifier to Fling as the Iron Ball, supposedly because gold is like really heavy. However, if you're broke, you could actually swap out the Big Nugget for a TM. If you have a TM for a 130 base power move like Overheat or Leaf Storm, flinging that TM will actually just match the power of the move. The best user for this was actually Kyurem Black back in Generation 8 Ubers because it was a tech option to allow it to deal with Necrozma Duskmane, a Pokemon who would typically actually wall it out otherwise due to its Steel Psychic typing being pretty good into ice moves. Even after a Dragon Dance, it didn't have a good matchup into Necrozma Duskmane. Having a 130 base power super effective attack allowed Kyurem Black the opportunity to try to continue its sweep instead of being stopped dead in its tracks. The Custap Berry, or as I call it, the Boom Berry, is a pretty niche and interesting item in competitive play. It's basically just a one-time guaranteed Quick Claw activation. If the Pokemon holding it drops below 25% health, they'll eat the Custap Berry and move first on the next turn. In singles play, this is typically reserved for slower Pokemon with access to Stealth Rocks and Explosion, as they can not only set up Stealth Rocks on the other side of the field, but on the next turn they'll usually just explode to prevent moves like Rapid Spin or Defog from removing them, as those moves require a target to work. You explode, now there's no target. But there's also some non-explosion users like Araquanid who will occasionally make use of the item. In VGC though, it's far more niche and is really only ever used on Belly Drum Snorlax sets, so Snorlax can get a sneaky KO after maximizing its attack, and due to Snorlax's ability Gluttony, the Custap Berry will activate at half health instead of 25%, letting it move first, steal a KO, and let the partner Pokemon set up Trick Room, at which point Snorlax is going to move at the top of the turn order anyways cause it's only 30 base speed. Okay, so the Shell Bell is actually an item with only a couple of users in like the entire history of the game, and once I explain what it does, you're gonna see why that is. It had two users, Aaron and Doubles Aaron, aka Togedemaru. You see, the Shell Bell simply causes every move you use to act a little bit like Giga Drain. Well, not Giga Drain, it was more like Absorb because those moves were only healing 1/8 of the damage that you deal. That's right, if you one-shot a max HP Incineroar at level 50, you'll be healing back a whopping 25 HP. Pretty underwhelming. That's why instead of using normal Pokemon, we're resorting to the same thing that low-quality home cooks do when things aren't going right. Cheese. Lots and lots of cheese. 25 HP isn't a lot of HP unless you're at level 1, in which case 25 HP is like more than double your HP stat. Aaron uses a moveset of Endeavor, Sandstorm, Toxic, and Protect with a Shell Bell at level 1. Endeavor causes the opponent to be set to the exact same HP as the attacker when it uses the move, which in Aaron's case is either going to be 1 because they knocked you down to Sturdy, or 12 because they didn't attack you. In either situation, after an Endeavor, basically every Pokemon is going to be in range to drop to the Sandstorm chip damage. and Aaron goes ahead and saps up 1/8 of all that damage it dealt to restore its health back to full and repeat the process until the game is over and you have to apologize for getting just a little too heated over a kid's game. Togedemaru, on the other hand, is basically doing the same thing but with Fake Out and Spiky Shield to be a solid Trick Room attacker in Smogon doubles formats back in Generation 7. Unfortunately, since it's a doubles format, this strategy is a little bit more difficult and only works under Trick Room, where it can always move first to avoid getting doubled into and shut down. You have Sturdy and you're at level 1. If 2 things hit you before you hit them, you're done. Back at the start of Scarlet and Violet VGC, there were tons of people experimenting with the format to try to find some way to deal with the menaces of King Gambit and Annihilate, 2 incredible Pokemon with the ability Defiant. Defiant causes the user to gain a +2 attack boost if they have any of their stats dropped by the opponent, meaning an Intimidate into these 2 was kind of like giving them a permanent helping hand. But what if we turn the tables on these 2 Pokemon? The Mirror Herb is an item which causes the user to copy any stat changes the opponent makes that are positive while the user is on the field. This means that if a Pokemon like Paldean Tauros were to intimidate a Defiant King Gambit would drop to -1 attack, then boost to +2 to end up at +1. But Paldean Tauros would use its Mirror Herb to copy that +2 boost and end up at +2. But we're not math magicians here and I dropped out of kindergarten, so we're going to go ahead and just say that the Angry Bull wins the matchup. This interaction has been useful for a couple of formats, but it was mostly utilized at the start of Generation 9 and a little bit of Regulation H later on. Even Pokemon like Hisuian Arcanine would occasionally run the item depending on metagame conditions, but it was a very niche interaction. This tech also didn't work on Dondozo because Dondozo has Unaware and it would just ignore your boosts anyways, but copying all those stats felt really good, so.
Lifeform data successfully copied. Scum!
The Ability Shield is an item which has a very particular function, which would seem practically useless if it weren't for Weezing existing in particular. The exact description of this item is an item held by a Pokemon. This cute and rather unique looking shield protects the holder from having its ability changed by others. Wow, that wasn't helpful at all. Does the Ability Shield prevent skill swap and entrainment from changing the holder's ability? Yes. However, this is almost never the purpose people use it for. The Ability Shield also prevents abilities from being negated in any way, shape, or form. This means that teams utilizing Neutralizing Gas Weezing to turn off Regigigas' ability can equip their Incineroar or other Intimidate users with the Ability Shield to still be able to use the ability Intimidate on opposing Pokemon. Most notably, they can intimidate Clear Body, Defiant, and competitive users without having to worry about their abilities. Tatsugiri was also known to run this item to ensure that Dondozo teams weren't hard shut down by the existence of Weezing on the opponent's team, as if Weezing's Neutralizing Gas was active when Dondozo and Tatsugiri tried to combine, it would just block the ability outright and they wouldn't get the boost. Just completely shuts down the team, down to the fact that Weezing even absorbs Toxic Spikes, you couldn't even stall them out. But a not so explored use case for the Ability Shield was as a countermeasure against Mold Breaker Pokemon. Mold Breaker just allows for the user to ignore an opponent's ability whenever they use a move. This is why Excadrill is able to set up Stealth Rocks against Magic Bounce users like Hatterene, and why it can one-shot Mimikyu through its disguise. But another Mold Breaker user who has seen heavy usage in recent formats is Ogerpon Hearthflame, whose sun-boosted Ivy Cudgels can one-shot many Pokemon, even those who should be immune to it due to the ability Flash Fire, in particular, Heatran. While this tech wasn't super common on Heatran, it was an item that would allow for your team to have a guaranteed Pokemon that could hard switch in and wall one of the most powerful physical attackers in the game. And it even won its fair share of online tournaments, but I'm not sure if it did that well in official tournaments. I can only find the online results. But those were just a few examples of weirdly useful items in competitive Pokemon, with some of the lesser known applications at least. What do you think about them, and what should I cover next? Let me know in the comment section below, And if you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. It'd mean the world to me. If you want to support me further, you can check out my Patreon page or become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button below the video. This gets you sneak peeks at future videos, bonus content, and access to my supporter-only Discord server where you can hang out and team build with other community members. You also see your name at the end of all my videos, like all these lovely people. Special thanks to my most boosted supporters, Avatar67 and Club, for their generous pledges. Another way to support me is to check out all the videos on the playlist on screen right now. I know you'll find something in there that you'll enjoy. Also, with Pokemon Champions coming out this week, I want to make sure you all know about my second channel where I do non-super edited, daily content. That's where most of my Champions content is going to live, so I'll be uploading a lot over there as soon as Champions comes out. Make sure you subscribe to that. Oh, and we're also going to be streaming over here on the main channel every day, Monday through Friday at 6 p.m. CST. So yeah, also tune into my Champions Night live stream when the game actually comes out. I'll probably be streaming as soon as it drops. But I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Thanks for watching.